long time. I happened to go to New York City when I was a young man. I grew up in a racing family in New England. It's a long story, but I ended up in someone's office that had a big problem. And the name of the problem was Budweiser was 10 years ahead of Miller Beer. And they were paranoid because they were owned by Philip Morris at the time. And cigarette smoking had just been taken off of television. They could no longer advertise on television. They were convinced the same thing was going to happen with beer. And here is Budweiser with unlimited hydroplanes and NASCAR and all kinds of stuff going on in American racing, and Miller had very little going on. And out of nowhere, I was a wise-ass kid. I said, well, you just met the right guy. So for the next 3 years, my job became to look at each brand of Miller beer and look at all the things going on in American racing and recommend to them what they should do, and then go out and interview the best teams in IMSA, the best teams in IndyCar racing, truck and tractor pulling. We did the first jet hydroplane, which was an absolute disaster. We did all kinds of things, large hydroplanes, small hydroplanes, all kinds of things, but a couple of them worked incredibly well, and then we would go out and show the distributors how to really use it as a marketing tool and sell beer. This led me to getting to know the guys at McLaren in America quite well. We ended up doing the biggest deal in kart history with Roger Penske in the early 80s. But I got to know the McLaren team very well, and they called me about a month later and said, listen, we're about to do a major program with a European manufacturer that we have worked with before, and they don't really have anybody in New Jersey to help them. And we need someone we can work with. And I said, who are you talking about? And they said, well, we're talking about BMW. Would you be willing? We know you, we could work with you. So this led me to BMW. I thought I'd be there 2 or 3 years. I ended up being there 15 years. And as I was talking to Sandy this morning, I had seen a lot of guys talk about a lot of different cars. He mentioned the Cobra Coupes. My predecessor at BMW told me this story before he passed away. Got a call from Carroll Shelby. He said, the Coupes are in the back of the shop, they're done. We pulled the engines out of them. Pick any one of them for 10 grand, come get it. 10 grand, come get it. Today, there are only 6 in the world, and they're worth $10 million each. So I had seen a lot of this come and go, and I kind of decided with my father, who was a fun-loving guy, that if I ever got an opportunity to pick up something at the end of its career, I would move heaven and earth to do it. And sure enough, don't you know, as we were developing various race cars for BMW, I watched the M1s kind of come and go. And we were at Daytona in 1985, the 3-hour race to end the season. And we were on the front row with David Hobbs and John Watson with the new GTP car. We had a mule car, we called it. And we literally taped the body together, and we're trying all these things. We were gonna run the 3-hour as a test. And we ended up qualifying on the front row, even though we had a misfire throughout the whole lap in qualifying. Rick Hendrick's Corvette with Saul van der Merwe, a terrific South African driver, was on the pole. So we're looking at this scene, and I walk down the middle of the grid, and there are probably 30 cars there. And at the back of the grid is this old beat up M1, absolutely at the end of its rope, painted by a brush, and you just can't imagine. Smoking like a pig at the back of the field. And I thought, oh my God, that is a poor old toilet on 4 wheels. I can't believe it. So sure enough, we go off. Our car is out by lap 14. They had a transmission problem. We're packing up. This car explodes at the back of the field after about an hour, blows the engine. And I thought, enough already. Put it away. It's a doorstop somewhere. I'll never see it again. A friend of mine goes to South America looking for Porsches. This is a year later. And he's looking around, and he kicks open a barn in El Salvador. and there are a dozen IMSA race cars sitting in the dirt. And right in the middle is what he thinks is an M1. There's a Sauber, there's a couple of 2002s, there's all kinds of cars. Absolutely horrible mess. And he said, huh. And he took down the serial number, and he comes out of the barn and he calls me and he says, Erik, I think I found something that you should pay attention to. I already have an M1. This is my friend talking. I have an M1 in my collection. Why don't you write this number down? So I write down the serial number, and he says, call Munich and see if it's real, because it's modified beyond recognition. So I said, okay. I call Munich, and I said, listen, we found this car. Is this a real Procar? And they said, yeah, it is. And he said, if you can get it, you should get it. And I said, okay. And I didn't think another thing of it. And a week went by, and a deal was put together, and I bought this thing over the telephone. And I had never seen it. The guy who owned it was incredibly shady. He wouldn't even tell me his whole name. It was on and on. So the deal we had was he would bring it to the Miami airport and let me know when it was on American soil, and I would pay him. So 6 months later, this god-awful looking 4 piston-driven engine propellers, Allied freight or something, comes up from South America. The thing's barely flying. And they pull the car out of the fuselage with a huge forklift. And I get sent this picture, and the car is 30 feet up in the air at this horrible angle, and they're kind of letting it down. And I got this call saying, it's at Miami Freight Forwarding, come pick it up, click. And I said, okay. So I bought an M1 at the absolute end of its racing career, knowing absolutely nothing about it. And Sandy talks about some of my escapades. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I was very involved in bringing M back to this country when we were about to get out of the business. When I started at BMW, I was given a file, and the first file said Skip Barber Racing. And they said, go up and see Skip. We're going to do a driving school with him for the M cars, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that led to a 10-year relationship and a dear friend who I still work with to this day. The second thing they said is, we've got a bunch of crap stored in a warehouse in Brookfield, Connecticut. I'll never forget it. I didn't even know where Brookfield, Connecticut was, but I knew it was on the way to Lime Rock. So I said, don't worry about it, I'll go take a look. I'd been with the company a month. And I go up there, and I'm going to meet Skip, and I pull in, and there's an engineering company that used to do some racing for us, and we had done a deal to lease their space in the back of their garage. And they were gonna move, so the stuff had to go. So I open this door, it's a wood floor, and all dirt, and a couple of little lights, and I peer in, and I see 2 M1s. I see David Hobbs's 320 turbo. The M1C was up on its side on the wall, and wheels and boxes and tires everywhere in an inch of dust. And I said, holy cow, the history of our company is sitting up here rotting away. So I said, okay, lock the warehouse. I went back and I said, what is going on with this? And they said, Erik, don't worry about it. The president just told us we gave all that shit to a boys' training school. They're gonna learn how to drill and cut. And I said, wait, no. That can't happen. So we have to go in and meet with the president. I've been with the company 4 weeks. And I said, this can't happen. We have to save these cars. This is the history of our company here. And I said, let us just secure them, and we'll worry about what to do later. And my boss is the VP of marketing, and he says, Erik, you're absolutely right. This is fantastic. The only problem is we have no money. And I said, okay, that's always the problem. So over the next 3 or 4 years, we would plan every new model introduction, every dealer meeting, every special event where they had big money to spend. And he would whistle to his secretary and said, get Erik to come down here. They're having a meeting, making the plan. Okay, here's the new 7 Series. Eric, what vintage car do we need to introduce the new 7 Series? And I'd say, well, we need an M1, or we need a 320 turbo, or okay, give them 50 grand, we'll restore the car, get it all. One after another, we siphoned off money to restore all of these cars, and there were 6 or 8 of them. And it was completely under the finance people's nose. And the only car we did not have was the CSL. And I knew the people that owned them. We had 3 or 4 of them that we raced during the early 70s in IMSA. I knew where they were. And I made a deal to get the 59 car, the car that won Daytona. That was the car I figured we should have. So no sooner do I make a deal to get this car, the finance people say, wait. We are not in the business of buying vintage broken down cars. We are in the business of selling new cars. So I said, well, this is a very important car. We need it for our collection. Don't want to talk about it. We're not going to give you the money to buy any broken down vintage cars. So I said, okay. There were 2 M1s there. And I liked one of them, quite clean, easy to restore, the other one less so. And I said, what if I traded for a car? And the finance guy, I could see I had him because he's looking, maybe if it's of equivalent value, give or take, we could probably work that out. So I make a deal to trade an M1 for a CSL that we did not have. We had 2 M1s. And they still give me garbage about it. We got it done. What I did not tell them was that I traded a perfectly together running M1 for a basket with 10,000 parts in it that became the 12 car that the company has today. And we restored it a few years later. But the only reason I'm telling you this story is there is a reason to honor the history of these companies and the things that make BMW different from other car companies. I had Auto Week do a banner for us at the racetrack that said a commitment to performance that dates back years, not months. Because all of a sudden Acura and Infiniti and all these other companies were coming after us, and we really had to reinvigorate what M meant to American customers. So in 1996, we did a lot of work on the E36 M3. It was a major project. We had some big problems, but it was a fantastic commercial success. So all of a sudden, my stock in the company is going way up. We're printing money for the company, and they can't build the cars fast enough. We win Car of the Year with Automobile Magazine. We never dreamed we could win that. And Munich calls us and said, hey, things are going well, but the McLaren won Le Mans in 1995 as a complete fluke. It was 22 hours in the rain. And because of J.J. Leto, who was an absolute animal, they won when no one expected it. And BMW was furious because McLaren got all the attention and all the press, and BMW was hardly mentioned. And the motor they had built for that car was an absolute Paul Rosha tour de force. $250,000 of aluminum and aerospace engineering, just incredible. So they said, look, we want to run a proper team at Le Mans in 1996, yet of course, they did not have the money. So they said, we'll make a deal with you, and we're talking to France and we're talking to England too. We want to run 3 cars. Give us $1 million. It'll be the American car. We'll put the stars and stripes on it. You nominate an American driver and we'll put him on the team, and we'll bring all your executives over to Le Mans and we'll show you a good time. And the kicker was, we'll let you keep the car when we're done. And I said to our president, how can we turn that down? We have to do this. And he said, you're right, let's do it. He said, go ahead and do it. We gave him the $1 million, everything gets started. We nominated Danny Sullivan to drive for us, who was the perfect choice. He was at the height of his career in IndyCar and very famous, very natural with the press, went great. But we had Nelson Piquet, Jacques Lafitte, we had all the top Europeans were with us. We ended up running 2 cars. We got our asses kicked by Porsche. We finished 7th and 9th, but we threw the best party you could ever imagine. We had a beautiful chateau with 40 rooms where we all stayed. We took a helicopter above the circuit at night. We had a full bar in the hospitality area. It was fantastic. The car comes back, we clean it up, they send it to us, and our president says, Eric, get rid of that thing. We don't need that. Just sell it. And I thought, not likely gonna happen. So what I did was, I hid it. I hid it right in the middle of our 8 vintage car collection, and no one even noticed. And it sat there for almost a year. And then our president was a very tough guy. He was a South African, a guy named Vic Doolan, comes toddling down the hallway one day and said, Eric, what's the story with the McLaren? I haven't heard anything. And I said, well, you know, Vic, it's an old race car. It didn't do that well. And frankly, we haven't had much interest. We don't see that we can really sell it. And he said, you're not going to sell it, are you? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, I knew it. I told the finance guys to just write it off. I knew you weren't going to sell it. And don't you know, we were struggling to get $750,000 for our $1 million car. What do you think it's worth today? Let me help you. More than $25 million. And they couldn't buy it back if they wanted to. And they use it all the time. They bring it out to Monterey, all these historic events. People love to see it. They love to hear it. It's Bill Oberlin's favorite car. And I consider that my everlasting gift to BMW of North America. But having said that, to get back to Sandy's topic, I have been working on restoring my car, and it turns out to have a very big history. In all of the Procar posters and pictures that you've seen, the #1 car with the Lotus window treatment across the top was Mario Andretti as the reigning world champion in 1978. And what do you know? He was driving my car. Turns out to be one of the 6 factory cars. It raced at Monte Carlo. It raced all over the Formula One circuit. Jacques Lafitte won a race in it, and it was leading 2 other races and set 2 poles when they blew the motor. But having said that, it had a long history in IMSA after that. It ran at Le Mans in 1982. I've got pictures of it coming down the Mulsanne Straight. And then I bought it, and I went back to the guys who ran it in IMSA for 3 or 4 years. And I went to Miami, and I walked into this guy's office. He was running the Fittipaldi Wheel Company. His name was Tony Garcia, a terrific guy. And here are pictures of my car crashed at every American racetrack that you can name. Every single American racetrack you can name, he's crashed it all for 4 or 5 years. The car was such a mess, it was almost unretrievable. So, because I have a patient wife, I have been restoring this car slowly, putting 2 kids through college and keeping the car. I send it $1,000 a month for 25 years. And the motor was being rebuilt in Canada, and it sat there for 20 years. And we lost all the importation documents, all the stuff with COVID, everything went wrong. We had to sneak it back into the country just a few months ago. And the short story is, we heard they changed the guards at 6:30, so my guy lined up at 6:15. He said, I got an old racing engine, I don't know anything about it, I don't know what. And the guy's like, what do you mean racing engine? I don't know what. And he goes, I don't like this, I gotta go in and talk to my supervisor. And my guy's sitting there sweating. And he comes out in 5 minutes, he goes, just go, just go, we can't deal with this, just go. So the car is back together, the engine is back in it. We are finishing the wiring, and it's going to be painted this spring. So maybe this time next year, Sandy and I can do dueling videos here, and we can talk about our own projects. But it really is a labor of love, and it's kind of fun to talk to people who can really relate to cars like these. because it's not a normal thing. It's very much of an abnormal thing, but it's a terrific passion, and it's a lot better than sports gambling, so just keep that in mind.